Learn English through history. The mysterious dancing plague. In the hot, dusty summer of 1518, in a city called Strasbourg, which is now part of France, a very strange and sad thing happened. Imagine a city with narrow streets made of stone, houses close together, and the smell of the river and people going about their daily lives. In this city, a woman named Frau Troffea started to dance. Now, this wasn't a happy, joyful dance. It wasn't like dancing at a party or celebrating something. This was different. Frau Troffea began to move in a wild, uncontrolled way. Her feet stomped on the stone streets, her arms flailed around, and her face looked strained and unhappy. She didn't look like she was enjoying herself at all. People stopped and stared. At first, they were just curious. They watched Frau Troffea as she danced for hours and hours, seemingly without stopping. She didn't seem to get tired. She didn't seem to be able to stop. As the hours turned into days, people started to get worried. This wasn't normal. Word spread quickly through the city. People talked about Frau Troffea, the woman who couldn't stop dancing. They wondered what was wrong with her. Was she sick? Was she cursed? No one knew. Then, something even stranger happened. Other people started to join her. Not in a coordinated dance. Like a group rehearsing a performance. Instead, they started moving in the same strange, uncontrolled way as Frau Troffea. They couldn't stop either. It was like an invisible force was making them dance. More and more people joined in. Men, women, and even children were affected. They danced in the streets, in the squares, everywhere. The city became filled with the sound of their feet hitting the stones and their heavy breathing. The city leaders, the people in charge of Strasbourg, were very confused. They didn't know what to do. They asked doctors for help. The doctors had different ideas. Some thought it was because of the hot weather. Others thought it was a punishment from God. Some even thought it was some kind of magic or a curse. The city leaders made a decision that, looking back, was a big mistake. They thought that if the people just danced it out, they would get better. So, they built a stage in the town square, a big open space in the middle of the city. They even hired musicians to play music. They thought the music would help the dancers. But this made things much worse. The music attracted even more people. More and more people started dancing, and the dancing became more intense. But because they were dancing so much, and they couldn't stop, they became very tired and sick. Many of the dancers started to collapse. They were so exhausted that their bodies just gave out. Some had heart attacks. Some had strokes. And sadly, many of them died right there in the square, while the music played on. Imagine the scene. Music playing, people dancing wildly, and others collapsing and dying. It was a terrible and frightening sight. The city became a place of sadness and fear. Families watched their loved ones dance themselves to death, unable to help them. Finally, the city leaders realized they had made a terrible mistake. They stopped the music and tried to get people to stop dancing. But by then, a lot of damage had already been done. The dancing continued in smaller groups throughout the city for weeks and even months. It eventually stopped, but not before many people had died. To this day, nobody knows exactly why this happened. Scientists and historians have different theories. One theory is that it was caused by a fungus called ergot, which sometimes grows on rye, a type of grain used to make bread. If people ate bread made with this contaminated rye, it could cause them to have hallucinations, seeing things that aren't there, and spasms, uncontrollable muscle movements. Another theory is that it was a case of mass psychogenic illness, which is like a kind of mass hysteria. This can happen when a group of people are under a lot of stress and fear. Their stress and fear can manifest in physical symptoms, like the uncontrollable dancing. Frau Troffea, the woman who started it all, remains a mystery. We don't know what happened to her after she started dancing. Did she stop? Did she die? History doesn't tell us. But her story is a reminder of this strange and tragic event. A time when a city was gripped by a mysterious and deadly dancing plague. It's a reminder that sometimes things happen in history that are difficult to explain, and that can be very frightening.